First, let's start our coverage in Louisville. Go straight to the scene. Our crime and justice correspondent Shimon Prokopez is standing by. Shimon, so why were the officers not indicted directly for Taylor's death?
Right. Well, what the Attorney General explained was that the officers, the two officers, Mattingly, Sergeant Mattingly, and the other officer, Cosgrove, were justified in the shooting because it was Breonna Taylor's boyfriend who fired his weapon. And therefore, what he was saying is because of that reason, they were justified in firing their weapons. And here's how he explained it.
While there are 6 possible homicide charges under Kentucky law, these charges are not applicable to the facts before us because our investigation showed, and the grand jury agreed, that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in the return of deadly fire after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. Let me state that again. According to Kentucky law, the use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death.
And so as to the detective that was charged, Hankinson, he was charged, Wolf, because the Attorney General says, and this has caused some controversy and why we're seeing so much anger here on the streets, is that he was charged with firing into the neighboring apartments, the Attorney General describing how they came to that decision.
Evidence shows that officers both knocked and announced their presence at the apartment. The officers' statements about their announcement are corroborated by an independent witness who was near in proximity to apartment 4. In other words, the warrant was not served as a no-knock warrant. When officers were unable to get anyone to answer or open the door to apartment 4, the decision was made to breach the door.
And Wolf, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend has said that he did not hear the officers identify themselves. All he heard was them just barging in, and therefore that is why he fired his weapon. He thought it was her ex-boyfriend. The Attorney General today saying they have one witness who says that, yes, the officers did identify themselves before they went in and broke down the door. Wolf?
All right, a tense situation there in Louisville. Shimon, you've been covering the protests throughout the day. There is a curfew now set for 9 p.m. this evening. Describe what you're seeing and hearing. I sense things have been very, very tense the past few hours.
It has been tense, and the tension has been building, Wolf, remember, for days. We've been expecting this announcement probably since last week. There were a lot of rumors that this was coming any day. The police put in all sorts of precautions in place. They've closed the streets down. And so a lot of the protesters who, after the decision came down, they knew exactly what this meant, and they were angry. They were angry that no one was going to be held responsible, at least in the indictment, for the death of Breonna Taylor. And so they took to the streets. They marched, they protested, and we were marching for about an hour and a half till we got to this location, this scene, and for whatever reason, it's still unclear, the police decided they were going to block them off and prevent the protesters from marching any longer, and they moved in. They started making arrests. They were trying to get people off the street, and for the last hour or so, it's been pretty peaceful. A lot of the protesters have left. They did make several arrests. And so that is the situation now. Again, there is this curfew, the curfew that starts at 9 p.m. There's a lot of concern from city officials that as we get into the night, we could see some unrest, Wolf.
All right, we'll stay in very close touch with you, Shimon Prokopez, on the scene for us in Louisville. Joining us now, Stephen Remines, the attorney, I should say, for Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. You heard the Attorney General say officers Cosgrove and Mattingly were justified in firing their weapons because they were returning fire from your client, Kenneth Walker. So what's your response right now, knowing what we all know, to the Attorney General?
Well, a prosecutor can indict anybody he wants and indict him for whatever he wants. That is a no. And what it is, they did not want to indict anyone for Breonna Taylor's murder. There are several things that, following up onto what he just indicated. He said that they knocked and announced, and that was corroborated by one witness. Literally a dozen witnesses have testified they did not announce. The witness who they choose to rely on actually gave a recorded statement immediately afterwards in which he says they did not announce they were police. Police then interviewed him 3 more times, and he ultimately changed his story and said they announced. They didn't present the dozen witnesses who said they did not announce. Okay.
The Attorney General also insisted.
Just gone and cherry-picked whatever things.
As you heard, the Attorney General also insisted that this was not a no-knock warrant. He says the officers knocked on the door, announced their presence, said their account is backed up. Once again, as you point out, that this one independent witness, although other witnesses deny that. So that differs from the account given by your client. Explain what your client said happened in this very, very sad case. Okay, so Mr. Walker testified, was interviewed by police that night. And he said they were banging on the door about 1:30, calling who is it? And suddenly the door burst open. I fired a shot into the ground. A dozen witnesses testified they never heard him announce as police, including the one that they're now relying on. Okay, the only people who said that they announced as police were the 2 cops who were facing charge. Are they obviously going to say after they kill an unarmed woman with, shoot her 6 times, multiple times while she's on the ground, right? But more importantly, Wolf, is this. There are 2 neighbors who called 911 that night. And in their 911 calls, they're saying, they're shooting here, please send the police. Okay? That is at that very time. Now, they want to say, oh, we announced. Well, the people who are calling 911 didn't hear them announce. They're asking them to send the police. And so the other thing about it is the Attorney General says they're justified. Every citizen in the United States who has a self-defense claim in a murder case gets to present it to a jury. Only in this case, or when it's a police shooting, does a prosecutor by prosecutorial fiat say, oh, no, they were justified and we're not even going to go forward. If they've got a defense, which they do, let them present it to a jury and see if a jury agrees with them. But don't just, our system of justice depends on jurors and letting jurors decide. It is not prosecutors acting as kings and saying, no, we're not going to charge whoever we don't want to charge. And that's what's occurred here. They presented whatever evidence they chose and to get the indictment that they wanted. And it is a tragedy. I mean, it is. And here's the thing about it too is everything I say to you today, let them release the evidence because I've seen it. Let them release the evidence and compare what I tell you to what Attorney General Cameron said today. I can promise you what I'm saying will be proven out by the evidence. What he said will not be. Stephen Romines, thank you very much for joining us on this important day indeed. Appreciate it. We will certainly stay in close touch with you. There's